Hello Classic Crew, and welcome to today's video where I'm going to be talking about 10 books I want to read in 2021. So we've been in the month of January for quite a bit now, but something that I like to do at the beginning of each year is to go through my goals and what I would like to accomplish over the year. And for the first time in my life, I actually made a vision board. I know, it sounds a little hokey, and maybe it is, but as somebody who's very visual, it is super helpful for me to take a look at my vision board whenever I'm starting to get bogged down in the day-to-day stuff, so I can keep in mind what the bigger picture is and the things that I'd really like to accomplish over the course of the year. But one of the things that I have dedicated myself to this year is to read more. I used to read books all the time. I still read, but not nearly as much as I would like to. So I thought by giving myself a goal of reading 20 books in 2021, that it would give me something to work towards. Now, hopefully I can actually read 20 books, but the books that I've chosen are not easy. I'm not reading just kind of fluffy, super easy fiction, stuff that you can pick up at the bookstore in their kind of bestseller section where it's just a little bit more simple. The stuff that I've chosen to read is heavy. So that means that each book will take me a little bit longer to read. So if I don't get through 20 books this year, at least I'll have gotten through a good number of books that I feel good about having read. So I thought I would share with you 10 of the books on my list that I am planning on reading this year because I am looking forward to investing more time into making myself better and reading better books. So let's get into it. P.S. If my voice sounds a little weird today, it's because this is the day after I had surgery. I talked about that in my last Scoop video, and I think I'm going to be talking about it a little bit more in my upcoming Scoop video, just kind of my experience and how everything went. But if I sound weird, that's why. I got the surgery yesterday and my voice is still sort of recovering. Apparently anesthesia can just kind of give you a sore throat. So that's where we're at, but let's hop in. The first book that is on my list is called Judaism Straight Up. So this book was written by Moshe Koppel, and this is the description on Amazon. In Judaism Straight Up, Moshe Koppel explores the central differences between traditional societies, including traditional Judaism, and contemporary cosmopolitan ones. He explains everything you always wanted to know about the subtleties of Jewish morality, tradition, and belief, and how these have unfolded to beat cosmopolitanism at its own game, advancing cooperation, fairness, and freedom. Written with incisiveness and droll wit and a scientific sensibility that draws on economics, game theory, and other disciplines, Judaism Straight Up reveals the secret of Jewish traditionalism's endurance. So I'm reading this because I am a religious Jew and I think that this topic is really interesting. Having read Jonathan Haidt's The Righteous Mind before reading this book, so helpful. Makes everything so much clearer. It is so helpful because a lot of the ideas that Moshe Koppel talks about, Jonathan Haidt talked about in The Righteous Mind. So that's kind of a cool hand-in-hand sort of thing. But I've already started the book. I'm about 100 pages in, and I am really enjoying it. I feel like I'm really starting to learn more about kind of this idea that being a religious Jew means that you sort of have to straddle the line between tradition and modernity because you are in a modern world, you are dealing with modern ideas of morality and stuff like that, but you are living a more traditional life. So I think it's interesting to see what he has to say about that, and I'm really looking forward to finishing it. I'm probably gonna do a video on it, and I'm excited to share it with you guys. Number 2 is Basic Economics. So I started this in 2020, but the book is very large. This is the size of the book. So it's not something that I'm expecting to finish all in a week. I'm expecting to kind of read it throughout the year, but hopefully I can finish it faster than that. I loved it when I started it. It is so easy to understand. I'm telling you, if you are somebody who's trying to understand economics and sees this book and thinks it's too big, it's gonna be too much for me, you're totally wrong. This book is so easy to read. It is not hard to read. I have understood every single concept that Thomas Sowell has written about. Thomas Sowell is the author, and it is fantastic. I'm highly recommending it, even though I haven't finished the book yet, because I can tell where he's going with it and I can understand everything, and that is so awesome. So I'm really excited to finish this in 2021. Hopefully I will finish it soon. Number 3 is Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. So my dad recommended this to me a while ago, so I figured it was probably time for me to read it. It was written by Robert Pirsig, and this is the description on Amazon. One of the most influential books written in the past half century, Robert Pirsig's Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance is a powerful examination of how we live and a breathtaking meditation on how to live better. Following a father and his young son on a summer motorcycle trip across America's Northwest, it is a story of love, fear, growth, discovery, and acceptance. Both personal and philosophical, it is a compelling study of relationships, values, and eventually enlightenment, resonant with the confusions and wonders of existence. So I did start reading this book already, and it does sort of read like a novel. It's easy to read, and you're getting these big ideas in an easy to digest way. So I think I'm really going to enjoy it. I like books that teach you a lesson, so this is a book that seems like it's going to do that, and I am excited to read it this year. The next book on my list, number 4, is Freud, The Making of an Illusion by Frederick Crews. So my husband actually bought this for me when we first got married. He went to the bookstore and picked me up a present because he knows I'm interested in Freud and psychology, and this book sort of picks apart Freud, and I thought that was interesting. I never actually got around to reading it, so this is the year I'm going to read it. Here's the description on Amazon. Sigmund Freud is one of the most influential figures of Western society. His ideas transformed the way that we think about our minds, ourselves, and even our thoughts. But while he was undeniably a visionary thinker, Freud's legend was also the work of years of careful mythologizing and a fierce refusal to accept criticism or scrutiny of his often unprincipled methods. In Freud, The Making of an Illusion, Frederick Crews dismantles Freud's totemic reputation brick by brick. Looking at recently revealed correspondence, he examines Freud's own personality, his selfishness, competitiveness, and willingness to cut corners and exploit weaknesses to get his own way. He explores Freud's wholehearted embracing of cocaine as a therapeutic tool and the role it played in his own career. And he interrogates Freud's intellectual legacy, exposing how many of his ideas and conclusions were purely speculative or taken wholesale from others. This book looks super interesting. I actually really love biographies, and this is a biography, but it's from a little bit of a different perspective. It's not just talking up the man who the book is about, it's actually kind of picking him apart. So this sounds like it's going to be really interesting, and I'm excited to read it because I think many of us know that a lot of Freud's ideas were not actually that accurate to the human mind, but it's so much of what we talk about as far as psychoanalysis and psychology. And so I'm interested to see, okay, how much of this is based on just Freud's own problems. It just sounds fascinating. So that's another thing I'm excited to read. Next up is Anna Karenina in Our Time. So this was written by Gary Saul Morrison, and Gary Saul Morrison is actually a mentor of my husband's. My husband went to Northwestern, and Gary Saul Morrison was a teacher there. So he wrote this book. I read Anna Karenina a couple of years ago and fell in love with it. Great book. If you haven't read Anna Karenina, you should read it. It's fantastic. But I've only heard great things about Anna Karenina in Our Time, which takes a look at Anna Karenina and how we should be using it to inform us now. So I'm going to read you the description. In this invigorating new assessment of Anna Karenina, Gary Saul Morrison overturns traditional interpretations of the classic novel and shows why readers have misunderstood Tolstoy's characters and intentions. Morrison argues that Tolstoy's ideas are far more radical than has been thought. His masterpiece challenges deeply held conceptions of romantic love, the process of social reform, modernization, and the nature of good and evil. By investigating the ethical, philosophical, and social issues with which Tolstoy grappled, Morrison finds in Anna Karenina powerful connections with the concerns of today. He proposes that Tolstoy's effort to see the world more wisely can deeply inform our own search for wisdom in the present day. Anna Karenina in Our Time actually delves into the ideas that Tolstoy was trying to get across and sort of how it's been bastardized today to treat Anna Karenina herself as the heroine when she's not. So this is another book that I'm really excited to get my hands on. So the next thing I'm reading is something that's going to be a little bit more on the lighter side, because I have been telling you a bunch of books that are quite in-depth, quite heavy, and so this one I just thought would be nice to break it up, and it is called A Historical Tour of Walt Disney World. This was written by Andrew Kist, and it looks really fun. It looks really fascinating. The whole story of Walt Disney World is super cool. If you haven't watched the documentary, The Imagineering Story, which is on Disney+, you really should, because it is fascinating, all of the things that go into creating these parks. It's really, really cool. So I thought I would pick up the book and read it. It's just something a little bit lighter, but it's still fascinating and interesting to me. So I'm really excited to dig into that because I love the history of theme parks. I think that that's so fascinating to read about and to learn about. Number 7 is War and Peace. So I did start this last year, but I definitely got sidetracked. It's intimidating. This book is so many pages, but I loved Anna Karenina so much I couldn't not read War and Peace. So I'm excited to sit down and really invest time into reading it. I recognize it is going to be a project, but I would love to actually know this book and understand this book. And something I would like to say, something my husband taught me. So both of us are Russian literature people. We love Russian literature. And something he learned from his mentor, Gary Salmorson, is that the translation really matters. There's a new set of translators on the scene. Their names are Richard Pavir and Larissa Volokonsky, and they are not the people you should be reading for translations. Constance Garnett is probably the best one to read for translations, but essentially what it comes down to is when you're translating Russian literature, you can either try and translate it word for word, where you're not getting the meaning or intention of what the author was actually trying to write, or you can translate it and try and get the idea of what the author was saying, even if it's not exactly word for word. These new translators are doing the word for word thing, so a lot is getting lost in translation emotionally and with the intention of what the author was trying to say, as opposed to little nitty-gritty language things, which make the books lose their heart. So I would not recommend buying the new fancy books that are translated by these new translators. Instead, look for some of the older translations because they were translating the book for its intention, and that's actually better. So in any case, I am looking forward to reading War and Peace. It's a big investment, but it's something I really have been wanting to finish for a long time, and I think that I should get as much out of it as I did out of Anna Karenina. I love Tolstoy. Tolstoy is one of my favorite authors, so hopefully this is something I can accomplish in 2021, but I won't be too hard on myself if I don't, because War and Peace is very long. Number 8 is The Splendid and the Vile. So I love Erik Larson. He wrote The Devil in the White City. He wrote In the Garden of Beasts. I just love his writing. I think it's fantastic. And I picked up The Splendid and the Vile last year. Again, I started it and I didn't finish it, but I was enjoying it before I stopped. And it is about Winston Churchill. So I will pull up and read for you the description on Amazon. On Winston Churchill's first day as Prime Minister, Adolf Hitler invaded Holland and Belgium. Poland and Czechoslovakia had already fallen, and the Dunkirk evacuation was just 2 weeks away. For the next 12 months, Hitler would wage a relentless bombing campaign, killing 45,000 Britons. It was up to Churchill to hold his country together and persuade President Franklin Roosevelt that Britain was a worthy ally and willing to fight to the end. In The Splendid and the Vile, Erik Larson shows in cinematic detail how Churchill taught the British people the art of being fearless. There's a little bit more written here, but the idea of reading a book about Churchill and how he dealt with being Prime Minister during World War II and also his family drama, I can't wait, because Erik Larson writes history like it's novels. He writes history like they're fiction, and that's, to me, my favorite. I like reading stories, so this is something I'm excited to read and to continue reading. Clearly, I got started in a lot of books in 2020 that I didn't finish, so 2021 almost feels like the year of finishing books I've started, but I still am excited to read it. Number 9 is The President, the Pope, and the Prime Minister. This was written by John O'Sullivan, and I was actually inspired to read this after watching The Crown and seeing the way that they portrayed Margaret Thatcher. I thought to myself, this doesn't seem super accurate, this seems biased, I would like to know more about her, and so I was trying to think about what I wanted to read next to kind of learn about her, and I figured out that this book seemed like a good fit because it was also going to teach me a little bit about Reagan and was also going to teach me a little bit about the Pope. So I'm going to read you the description on Amazon, which says, "The President, the Pope, and the Prime Minister is a sweeping dramatic account of how 3 great figures changed the course of history. All of them led with courage, but also with great optimism. The Pope helped ordinary Poles and East Europeans banish their fear of Soviet communism, convincing them that liberation was possible. The Prime Minister restored her country's failing economy by reviving the vigorous virtues of the British people. The President rebuilt America's military power, its national morale, and its preeminence as leader of the free world. Together they brought down an evil empire and changed the world for the better." So this book looks fascinating. I love the idea of intertwining these 3 figures in history. And of course, they were intertwined of their own accord, but also having a book that talks about the 3 of them on their own, but also in relation to each other, sounds absolutely fascinating. So this book, I think, is going to be a great addition to the list, and I'm excited to see what it will teach me. And the last book that is on my list is actually the Torah. I haven't read the Torah, the Old Testament, the Bible, in a little while, and I would love to reread it, probably in the English initially, and then I would love to go back and read it in the Hebrew with the commentaries. So I have read it in Hebrew a few times and I've read the commentaries, but I think it would be interesting for me to read it in English because, you know, English is my first language. So it's going to read a little bit more close to home. And then when I go back to read it in the Hebrew, which is the language it was originally written in, and I do understand, I'll get an even deeper sense of it. I think that'll be really cool to read the Torah and the Bible almost like a book. Of course, it's so much more than just a book. It's so much more to me and to so many of you, I'm sure. But I think it would be interesting to sort of try and read it that way and internalize it as a story, because that's how we learn, is through stories. I can also listen to it on Audible, which is cool, and I think it'll be important for me to take that time this year. And then of course, if I have extra time, I'd like to read Nevi'im, which is prophets, and Ketuvim, which is writings. So then I would read all of Tanakh, which is the Torah, the prophets, and the writings as one group. So those are just 10 of the books that I am excited to be reading this year. I hope that maybe some of you guys will find some inspiration in this list and you guys will read them too. Or if you've already read them, I'd love to hear that in the comments. It's a pretty conservative list. It's got a lot of books there that were written by conservatives, which is cool, and also has a more conservative viewpoint on the world, which is nice. And as I read each one, I'll be able to put it on my vision board and on my reading list. And by the end of the year, hopefully I'll have read more than I did last year. So thank you guys so much for watching today's video. Please subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. It really helps me out when you do that. I love seeing your beautiful faces when you come back and leave comments. It means a lot. Don't forget to hit that notification bell to get notified of all my new videos as soon as they go up. And if you would like to donate and support my channel, you can head over to classicallyabby.locals.com to get ad-free versions of these videos. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!